What's going on, everybody? This is Black Men Sundays. I'm your host, Corey Sylvester Murray, and we're talking about generational wealth, mental health, finance, and business.
It's a Black Man Sunday. Time to put all childish things away. I refuse to be the man I was yesterday. Gotta put my best foot forward and elevate.
And today we have Richard Cuff. This brother is Black Men Sundays alumni, but I have a new name for this brother. He's Coach Richard Cuff. Let me tell you why he's a coach. When we talk about brothers that have mentored, a lot of guests we've had say, you know what, to be successful, you need a mentor. This brother was mentored by Les Brown, but we're talking about the Miami Les Brown, not the Les Brown y'all know. We're going to take it way back. This brother here on our last Black Men Sunday show, you have to go back to November 27th, 2022. We're like 121 episodes now. But go back to that November show, Richard Cuff. We spoke about the 5 dimensions of wealth. We also talked about Chloe P, consumer, laborer, owner, investor, philanthropy. This brother here is the mayor of Blossom Ridge. We're talking about, when we talk about Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, Duval. This brother here represents Northwest Jacksonville, Dunn Avenue. This brother's also the president of CTI Marketing. This brother's a philanthropist. He's a marketer. This brother's also a violinist. He also gave us a quote from John Rockefeller: own nothing, control everything. When we talk about the physical, the spiritual, the PS factor, the shirt on his chest right now, EPME, extreme positive mental energy. So without further ado, Coach Richard Cuff, Duval in the house. Welcome to Black Men Sundays, man. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm taking notes of like, dag, that's me, myself. So we go, yeah, I love what you obviously have done a quite a Google search on me. But yeah, that's what I've been doing here, man. I've been chopping it up for a minute in Jacksonville for about 30, I've been here 34 years now. Wow.
Yeah, man. Last time you were on the show, I don't want to call you out, but I think you were like 62.
Yeah, 63. I hit
You were
60.
63 on the last time. So,
Yeah,
I'm not going to
I
ask
hit
your age
60,
now.
60. I hit 60. Man, I hit 65 November 15th. Let me tell you what, this has never happened to me. I told this waitress at the restaurant, something came up and I told her, oh, I said, after eating this good meal, I get to now at my age, I'm going, you know how when you get old, you eat, you got to go to sleep. So I said, this is my time to play old man because I'm gonna go home and take a nap after. She's like, how old are you? I said, I'm 65. She looked at me like, what? And then I never heard this before. She said, oh my God, black don't crack. And I'm usually using that on women. I'm like, that's the first time I ever heard it. So I realized, yeah, I don't necessarily, I don't know what a 65-year-old is supposed to behave like, but because my life has, and not by any design of my own, major adversity has seemed to always hit my life every 10 years, and I'm forced to break everything apart like Lego blocks falling all over the place and start all over again. And I never look back to think that this hell that I'm going through right now that's tearing me apart is actually going to serve to keep me young at heart. And so right now, no, August 15th will be my new life day because that was it'll be the third anniversary of my wife's passing. So technically I'm 3 years old now in my newness. And I'm not the guy I was before my wife passed away. And it took me these last 3 years to figure it out. And I think I'm ready to take on these next 10. But this time I'm going to be ahead of the curve for that remaking. The next time I'm going to be the one to break the Lego blocks apart 10 years from now and start all over.
Yeah, I hear you, bro. Because I feel like, we getting old school. I think the Lego blocks, they turned into Roblox now.
Yeah. What I don't know what do they got now. I don't have my Rubik's cube. I usually do the Rubik's cube. Um, that's the thing that keeps my brain going, and I try to get it faster and figure out new ways to solve it. And I found that if I don't do it, like if I put it down for 6 to 8 months, I'll have difficulty remembering the algorithms of which way to move it and solve it. But the more I use it, I keep those algorithms fresh, and it's just my way of exercising my brain to keep it not acting like it's 65.
I understand, since we've spoken to you, traveled a little bit, you went to Tulsa, went to Black Wall Street. So let's just start there. Let's talk about Black Wall Street first, and then let's talk about some other traveling that you've done since we've spoken to you the last time.
Yeah, let me tell you what really was ironic. That trip that I took to Black Wall Street happened because I was hiring a new employee, but she had to finish a commitment that she made to her previous employer, and that was to attend a conference in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And when she said Tulsa, I said, "When are you going to be in Tulsa?" And she gave me the date, and I said, "Well, I'll be coming back from my trip to Seattle and through Cincinnati, and rather than come back to Jacksonville, I'll change my flight. I just have to fly into Atlanta and then back out to Tulsa." But I changed my flight because she was in Tulsa. I just flew out there and I wanted to see it. Man, there is something spiritual about that place because when you're driving through Tulsa, Oklahoma to get to the area called Greenwood, you literally cross a railroad track. And you could see that was the natural border between the Black community and the white community. Literally, you don't cross the railroad track to get it. You go across and it's the white community. Here's one of the things I did not expect. There's got to be at least three, maybe four old churches. Like they look like they're 200 years old. The buildings look like they've been around I mean, like big, towering churches. And my thought was every time they tell the story of white people being angry enough to burn down the entire area of Black Wall Street, Greenwood, nobody mentions the fact that these 4, 5 big stately churches were sitting there, and it's almost in a sense like the churches was just sitting there watching it burn, and that was the spirit that I got. And then as I drove, what is it, Archer and Vine, and then Greenwood, um, there's I forget what the name of the street is, but there's like a east west north south, and then there's a street that runs between the two, and that's where you get the Gap Band, Greenwood, Archer, and Pine. And I rode that street, and I could just see the energy of the entrepreneurs scurrying around. There are some areas of the community of Greenwood that have nothing but big empty lots, and you know that that's where businesses and homes were. And what's ironic is it's still not developed. So I think the eye opener for me to see it for myself was, one, to see the established church was there the entire time and in essence did nothing, and to this day has done nothing. And then to see the entrepreneurial spirit of what is today Black Wall Street, it has more of a feeling of a flea market than it does a Black Wall Street. And but I feel like that's the opportunity for us as African Americans, as we now are beginning to think of ourselves as our own separate economy.
You're also the mayor of Blossom Ridge, Northwest Jacksonville. So let's talk about, but before we get into the Jacksonville, let's talk about, because of your knowledge and the setup that you have in Dunn Avenue in Northwest Jacksonville, when you got to Tulsa and you were on Black Wall Street, when you first got there, like what was your very first eye-opening experience? I know you gave us some information, but what was like the first thing when you first pulled up and you looked around? Like, for someone that's never been there, like what was that perspective like?
I literally drove in specifically to go on a tour that they take you as you go through the city. But because of my schedule, I wasn't able to get on at the beginning of the tour, so I could only catch them at the end of the tour. And the tour ends at this place I can't remember what they call it, but it's like a museum that walks you through what the Greenwood is all about. So you can see that there are pockets where they put money into, right? And that museum is a beautiful thing. They have like there's one area where there's literally the railroad track is on the floor. you know, that you just get that feeling. They have photos and some, you know, memorabilia from the community back then. Um, and what's interesting is there's a photo on the wall that they have that the members of Black Wall Street, you know, took. And when I called a friend of mine to tell her I was at Black, you know, I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma at Black Wall Street, she said to me, I just saw a picture, a photograph that am about to go and buy for you right now. And it's this photo that's on my wall here. It's literally the photo is the men of Black Wall Street. So I look at that and I remember it. I look at those men and I know the story of Black Wall Street, you know, that basically two men, two successful businessmen who owned property and had the thought, let's create something here where we all can do business together. They started that process. And of course, racism, only as America can do it, that's probably America's #1 export that we don't talk about. America's #1 export is racism. What other countries are, Germany, literally, Hitler sent people over here to study the Jim Crow era to apply it back to how he could get the Jews, because these true racist countries go like, how the heck do you get all these free Negroes to never rise up? Why have they never gone? What are you guys doing that we're not doing? And they come over here to try and figure it out. Well, that energy, that spirit is what destroyed Black Wall Street, and it's still here today, and it's what stops it from rising up again, because that's a deliberate effort. So with the other thing that I recognize in Tulsa is there's a expressway running right through the middle of the Greenwood area. Why? Go to any major Black city in this country that had a historically Black thriving economy, and you're going to find the expressway going right through the middle of it. That's because when these white racists were designing the expressway, and there was all this open land that they could have made the expressway go by the city, they said, why not curve it through the middle of the city and take it right through the middle of these Black communities? And that's exactly what they did. That's the only reason the expressways go through the middle of the city. They were just supposed to, the expressway was supposed to get you close enough. The analogy that I would use is a rocket. We take a rocket to the moon, but the rocket isn't to the moon. The rocket is to get you off of Earth. Then once you're off of Earth, that little capsule pops off and it does the work. Well, that's what the expressway was supposed to be. The expressway was supposed to be the rocket that gets you to Atlanta, and then you could get off on the side street and drive through and do what you were supposed to do when you get there. But what did they do? They plowed that rocket right through the middle of our city, didn't care if it exploded, because that served their purpose. When I look at Black Wall Street and the potential for Black Wall Street today, that's what has caused me to do what I'm doing here in Jacksonville. I saw that there was an area of Northwest Jacksonville that kept being bundled into all the other areas. Now there's an area of Jacksonville where there's high crime, but that area of high crime is no different than any other city. Well, there's a lot of Black on Black crime over there. Well, heck, there's a lot of white on white crime and Jewish on Jewish crime and Asian on Asian crime. Everybody does crime to themselves. It's not usually white man kills white man, Black man kills Black man. So crime is not the issue, and crime is not a culture. Crime is the absence of culture. And in the absence of culture, you get crime the same way in the absence of light, you get darkness. And so when Black folks started moving into these communities that were deemed to be upper middle class white communities, white folk did what they do. They pulled up and they left, but they left the infrastructure there, and they left the infrastructure without the money to maintain the infrastructure. So now we have these areas throughout the Black communities that used to be thriving white communities, and now they're torn down buildings and drug infested and rat and roach infested, because when the white flight left, they took the wealth with them. But here's where our opportunity is. Our opportunity is to pour our wealth back into those systems. Now, and I'll say this, prior to President Obama and the 2012 Jobs Act, we did not have a financial infrastructure, but the Jobs Act was a game changer. And that's what allowed me, in seeing that in 2015, I renamed this area Blossom Ridge. And I'll admit, the name, the mayor of Blossom Ridge, I embraced that name. But that was a name that people were calling me to kind of like speak degradingly of my efforts to change a whole community. It was like, how dare you think you could make a difference, Mr. Mayor of Blossom Ridge? And they were being sarcastic when they said it. But 10 years later, come 2025, we're celebrating the 10 years of Blossom Ridge. And this community is now one of the fastest growing and wealthiest Black communities in the country. And it's not on anybody's radar right now. And that's why so many people come here to Jacksonville and they're blown away to find that this area has this much wealth. And I'll put it this way. Jacksonville is 820 or so square miles, 820 square miles. And so to compare that, imagine Fulton County or whatever that is in Atlanta, Atlanta is in the county and it has 20 other cities or so around it that are in Fulton County. Imagine taking all 20 of those cities, combining them into one and calling it the city of Fulton. That's what we did here in Jacksonville. Back in the 60s, we consolidated all those small cities and called them Jacksonville. And it's Jacksonville and Duval are one and the same, except for three cities. I think it's Neptune Beach, Jacksonville Beach, and a city called Baldwin. Those were the three cities that these white folk on the outskirts said, ain't no way we putting our eggs in that basket, so we're going to keep our own city separate. So technically, Jacksonville is not 100% consolidated. So when 3 out of maybe 25 or 30 cities decided they were not going to go in, the city said, okay, well, you still will be part of Duval County. But now that we have this consolidated city and we have over 820 square miles, I'd say of that 820 square miles, about 200 square miles is Black folk. That's huge. And so my point in that is, even though we may be 10 times the size of an average thriving city, we have only scraped about 1/10 of the potential for building the wealth. And that's why I am really advocating for turning this area of Blossom Ridge, Dunn Avenue, north of the Trout River, south of the airport, turning this into the Black Wall Street of the 21st century.
And let's just clarify something. This Black Men Sundays, we're based in Orlando, but people all over the world listen. So when you talk about that square feet, you compared it to Atlanta. How big per square mile is Jacksonville when we compare it to like Orlando or Miami or Pensacola, Tallahassee? Like, let's talk about the range it covers in the state of Florida. How big is Jacksonville?
Let's say Jacksonville rounded up to 1,000 square miles. So we've got 1,000 square miles and we've got about 1 million people. So that means for every square mile, there's only 1,000 people. Put that into perspective. I think Manhattan, New York might be a total of, I don't know, I think it may be 20, 30 square miles. Got 14 million people in 30 square miles. 14 million. Jacksonville has 1,000 people, less, probably somewhere around there, about 1,000 people for every square mile. That is a very sparsely populated area. And so what that means is there is nothing but potential throughout the city of Jacksonville. And I feel like we just stepped into the 21st century because our city just agreed to kick out $675 million to the NFL, well, the owner of the Jaguars, to build a new $1.2 billion stadium. That'll be finished in about 5 years. So when that stadium finishes, it's going to be the most modern football stadium on earth. And it's going to have all the bells and whistles of a 21st century stadium. And it's going to bring Jacksonville like a quantum leap up to into this century and probably into the next 50 to 100 years. And this is the opportunity for African Americans to say, we need to pool our investment capital and make it happen. And I've been advocating for this. Now, yes, I did Blossom Ridge 10 years ago, but I've been here in Jacksonville 34 years. I came here with a business plan. And I think I was 2 weeks here in Jacksonville before I was meeting with the city council and trying like, look, what can we do? I was 30 years old. Dang. And I've been hitting it ever since, man.
Because a lot of us, I'm not gonna lie, when I first moved to Florida, I drove through Jacksonville to get to Tallahassee, drove back to Virginia, drove past Jacksonville to get to Orlando. And I'm not gonna sound ignorant, but I ain't gonna lie. We first hit Florida. I said, "Oh, we in Miami." You see the skyline with the water. I'm like, and then I saw that, okay, we got another 500 miles to go. We're not in Miami. This
Yeah,
Jacksonville. So yeah, so no, that's awesome, man. And last time we spoke to you, you were the president of CTI Marketing. You had your Chloe P concept, consumer,
yeah,
labor, owner, investor, philanthropist, which is what you are. But and you also create your own media. You don't need the TV station. You can create your own media. So when we're talking
sure.
about that and the PS factor, because I see you have the EPME shirt, the PS factor, which stands for physical and spiritual concept. Even though y'all gonna have to go back to that show and listen to it, just give us a minute breakdown of that real quick. Just a little something for the new listeners.
Well, first the PS Factor, it started off as in a workshop that I would do. Remember when I said I came here to Jacksonville with my business plan in hand, and I immediately started hosting workshops. And I would do it, and I still do it. It's called the Lunch and Learn Workshop. And understanding the basis of business was that title back then. And one of the things that I pointed out was that what makes it easy for me as a consultant to help any business is that I think of being a business or a marketing consultant the same way an optometrist or podiatrist or tire company sales company would think. There's not one time the tire store has to worry about somebody driving up there with triangular tires or tires that are square. All tires are round. All tires, for the most part, are made of rubber. Some have only rubber, others have steel belt. They might vary, but the roundness of the tire will never change. And as a coach or a consultant, that's the area from which you coach. Most people think that a coach is there to do something for you, but coaching is the lowest level of assistance beyond that little voice in your head that's telling you to do stuff. When you remove the coach, you ain't got nothing but that voice in your head. You bring the coach back in, and it's now you and that coach. Deion Sanders was once asked, how is it that he knows that he's hearing the voice of God? When he would always credit God for his accomplishments, and one of the reporters asked, well, how do you know that that's God's voice you hear? He said, because it's the only voice in my head. Man, that was so profound. Think about that. When you remove the coach and it's just your voice in your head, now you remove your voice. What do you hear? When you remove your voice, you're not like, most people are not like Homer Simpson. Homer Simpson, they show like that image of what's going on in Homer's brain. Ain't nothing up there. But there's always something there, because that's something that's there. If I remove the sound of this room, if I remove the light, all the physical stuff, and then I could remove the voice that's in my head, I'm still conscious. And that's what makes me alive, is not the breath in my body, because my wife spent she spent 7 days in a coma back in 2010. Now she passed in 2015, what is that? Whatever, 2021. But 11 years earlier, she was in a coma. She wasn't even able to breathe for herself. So the machines were breathing for her. But something kept her consciously alive, because her body was digesting food the way it was supposed to. Her blood was still circulating through her body. Oxygen was coming in and being transformed from blood cells and all. So what was that was doing that? She was in a coma, but her body was still taking in air from the atmosphere and inserting it into her blood cells, and it was going through her body. That's the consciousness of you. That's what the PS factor is. So when I break down a business and I say every business, just like a car dealer or a tire salesman looks at all tires the same, I look at all businesses the same. Every business has four main components, and then there's a fifth one that takes you to the fifth dimension. But the four main components are marketing, accounting, and customer service. You can remove those three from the business, and every business is different. Even if it was a lawn care business, if Johnny started a lawn care business and Mary started a lawn care business, neither Johnny or Mary would have the same lawn care business. Even if they both had the exact same tools and the same customer base, their businesses would look different because consciousness, they don't share the same consciousness. That's what makes them different. That's what makes their business different. When I work with an entrepreneur, the first thing I tell them, look, I am not here to work with your business. So if you're looking for somebody to help make you successful in business, then I can give you plenty of my friends who work with specific things that you need for your business. I want to work with mindset. So let's separate what you do. You bake cakes. I don't have to tell you how to bake cakes. You cut grass. I'm not going to tell you how to cut grass. You make dresses. I'm not going to tell you how to make dresses. That's up to you and God, how y'all want to do that. But I will definitely tell you what you can do with marketing, accounting, and customer service. The part that's left up to you is the product or service. And that's what I used to call it. I called it the product or service. But as the years progressed, I started calling it the PS factor because I was saying what you put into it makes it different than anybody else. And then as I started studying more and getting more into metacognition and understanding how the brain works, and literally there are cells in your body, they're called self-receptors. I'll say this, every cell in your body, every single cell in your body is coated with something called a self-receptor. And so as your cells, let's say this is one of your cells and this is another cell, this is a blood cell and this is a, I don't know, a lung cell or whatever the case is, but they kind of bump into each other. If they didn't recognize each other, they would fight because one would, that's why a person that gets a heart transplant, they have to give them medication so that their body doesn't reject it. And what causes the body to reject it is it doesn't recognize that cell as itself. Now, that's some powerful stuff for your body to have cell receptors. Well, those cell receptors, just like every cell in your body has a coating that recognizes it belongs to you, there's energy in the universe that recognizes that that energy belongs to you. And you can tune into that energy. So as I started to study neuroplasticity and what self-receptors were and how our thoughts, not just that our thoughts attract, I want to know why your thoughts attract. There's got to be some scientific evidence behind it. And so as I started looking at the scientific evidence, I started stepping away from, ain't he good? Jesus will do it. The Lord will fix it. No, I want to know there's a reason for that. And and I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I remember a van was crashed here in Florida. And I think there was something like 14 children on board. I think, and everybody perished. And one person survived. And I was listening and watching all the people that were posting, look at God. God saved him. God spared him. Like, well, then what did God do to those other 14 that burned in the crash? See, that doesn't make sense. There are plenty of ways that you can explain that and find it in the Bible. There's one verse that says it. Chance happens to all of them. There's a time to die and there's a time to time to kill and a time to heal, a time to be born and a time to die. There's a time for a van to flip over and there's a time for somebody to walk away from it. Chance happens to all of them. That's how you explain that. But when you can impact it, and there's just like you can say, okay, well, wait a minute. If there are certain things that I have no control over, then what are the things that I do have control over? And those things are your thought, the thought energy that shapes that the listening to that little voice that tells you cancel that trip. Something told me to cancel that trip. Something told me to not get on that bus. And lo and behold, the bus went over the rail and everybody on the bus died. And I didn't get on that bus. Now you can say God told you. Now you can say it because it was conscious. It wasn't just the roll of the dice. It was consciously listening to God. And so the PS factor, yes, it's about balancing your physical and your spiritual, not letting your physical voice in your head cancel out the spiritual voice, but letting them work in harmony together. There's a time for the spirit to speak, and there's a time for the physical to speak. That's what the PS factor is. But the definition of the PS factor is that it's your level of conscious awareness of your natural God-given ability to turn that thing off and on, to attract a successful outcome in any given situation. So, in essence, if I could put it into just a short message that to help anybody to explain it, what's the PS factor? The P and the S are for personal success. It's your personal success factor, and the only person that can change your personal success factor, move it up or down, is you. And when you come to understand that, then you're not going to look for success in the next course. You're not going to be buying the I'll show you how to make 6 figures at Amazon. Hell, I can go to the Amazon webpage and get all that information for free. And that's what I found. I had to spend tens of thousands of dollars to figure that out. But the reality of it is that if you can connect your PS factor to God's voice, then God will give you witty inventions. He'll calm your spirit when you're worrying about the market collapsing. He'll show you where to go and give you opportunities to get your voice out there that will bring the wealth into your household. Now, EPME shows up is that EPME is extremely positive mental energy. And the reality of it is when you do plug into God, you better plug in with some EPME, because two things going to happen. God is going to give you himself in complete. He ain't going to water himself down for you. He ain't going to give you a little taste of him. It's going to be all 100% absolute God. And if you are unable to handle the energy that God pours into your life, it's going to blow every fuse in your life. Wealth is going to show up and you're going to drink it up like a drunkard. Financial opportunities are going to show up. The most beautiful girl in the world is going to show up because you plugged into that God energy. And the next thing you know, she busting the windows out your car because you out here fooling around with some side chick because you don't understand what a blessing she is. That's the PS factor. I'll wrap it up with this. On November 15th, I'm officially releasing my book, The PS Factor. This is the 21 Days to Greatness is the ebook, and it just kind of gives a taste of the PS Factor for my coaching. But the book, the PS Factor, is the first in the series of 3. There's a trilogy because there's 3 modules in the book. The first one is going to cover the 7 habits to greatness. The second one is going to cover 7 steps to overcoming adversity. And the third one is going to cover the progressive mindset. But in this first volume, we're talking about 7 habits to greatness. So the book is called The PS Factor, 7 Habits to Unleashing Your Greatness and Building Generational Wealth. And actually, we're starting the promotion for the wait list and pre-orders on Monday.
You know, outside of traveling to Tulsa, you also traveled to Sweden. Let's talk about your experiences there and just, what was eye-opening to you in Sweden?
Man, let me tell you, Sweden, you know how Martin Luther King says, I have a dream. I've been to the mountaintop, that kind of thing. And he was that I have a dream and I've been to the mountaintop. He was metaphorically speaking. But bro, I went to Sweden. I was literally on the mountaintop. And I remember my pastor years ago, Von McLaughlin here at the Potter's House here in Jacksonville. He called all the entrepreneurs up to the altar, and he was going to say a prayer over the entrepreneurs of the church. And I don't know, it had to be at least 100 people pulled up. And for whatever reason, out of that crowd, he singled me out. And he said this prophecy. He said, you're frustrated because you're seeing people not do what they're supposed to do with their money. He says, but no, God has told me to tell you that when you find yourself in a room full of millionaires and billionaires, and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, don't get upset, because it's simply God telling you you're next. And I never forgot that prophecy. And when I went over there to Switzerland and I looked around and I saw, I mean, everybody on that mountain, because I got in the mountain that I was on was they have what they call white badge meetings, and nobody gets into the white badge meetings because you have to have flown in on a private jet and probably have like $20 billion to your net worth to even get invited to that side of the mountain. So we were over here on the side of the little us that got a few pennies, but I got invited to a private meeting. You had to take a train up the side of the mountain, and once we got up to the top, there's this really luxurious hotel up there, and it was a private meeting. But everybody there had been invited, and everybody there was worth a million or more, I guess. But there I was. There's that prophecy. I was surrounded by all these people. And I was just thinking, man, look at all this wealth in this room and all the problems that can be solved if all these people get together. And bam, I remembered that prophecy. And standing out there looking out over those mountains in Switzerland, man, I just saw God, and I heard God just speak to me. And so it wasn't that I had a dream, I had a reality. And it wasn't that metaphorically I've been to the mountaintop. I was on the mountaintop, and God just showed me who was missing in this group. And it was African Americans. And man, there's no way that I could come back. And I didn't come. I came back from Switzerland a changed man. And I've seen it. And I see that there's a place that God has prepared for us. Not only, he can't prepare a table for you in the presence of your enemy without you being present at the table. But we're not at the table because we're allowing our enemy to dance all over everything. So we've got work to do. And that's why the book, The PS Factor, I think has to come out first. And because it's going to be hard for you to understand what I'm saying if you don't understand every like bit of energy that I'm putting out, if you don't understand it. So the PS Factor is going to help you to do that. So I came back from Switzerland and immediately went to work. I opened up the place that I'm in right here is called the Miriam R. Cuff Innovation Center. I'm gonna turn the camera around real quick, let you guys see it. But it's a nice center. I mean, small space, but it allows me to do very intimate type of presentations. I can invite the community out. We can have coaching sessions, make meetings, chop it up. The idea of the Innovation Center is just to take the idea at its freshest stage and then map out the process here at the center. And then last year, right after coming back from Switzerland, I bought a consulting firm, and it's called SMS Global Consultants. Because why? I knew I was to be consulting on a global level, so I bought this consulting firm. And it is my prayer in the next 5 years that we're one of the largest, not just Black-owned consulting firms, but one of the largest consulting firms in the nation, period.
It's an election year. I wouldn't be doing my due diligence with Black Men Sundays if I didn't ask you, Kamala, Trump, and why.
Number one is Kamala Harris. I think is a move in the right direction. I'm not necessarily thrilled with how she got there, but if on one side of the fence a group of people can say God moved in such a way that he put Trump in the office, then I believe God can move situations that he put Kamala Harris there as well. So as far as where I stand from a political standpoint, I'm all Kamala. Number one, I'm a Black man, and I'll kick somebody's ass over talking about my wife, my daughter, my mother, the way Trump talks about Black women. And that pisses me off, that there are Black men who are so committed to the Republican Party that y'all won't, I'm not saying you, but I'm just talking in general. These Black men who are Republicans won't step up and say, hey, Republican, damn it, but I'm Black first. No, they said, well, we're going to support him. Are you going to support the nomination of Trump? Yeah, when that fool apologizes for what he just said about my sister, when he pulls up and stop talking nonsense about it, talk about the issues. That's why I'm in this party. But from a party standpoint, I think I shared it with you guys the last time I was on. I am NPA, no party affiliated. And that's not independent. Now, some have said that independent means you're not a part of the party, but independent is even an ideology or political ideology. So if Democrat is left leaning and and Republican is right leaning, conservative, Democrat is left leaning, liberal, progressive is forward thinking, whatever, Democrat or Republican, then independent is a party that can think independently of those two parties, but it's still a party. What I am is a person who ain't got nothing to do with any of that. I'm getting back on stage, and I'm working on a new bit, y'all. So I came up, and I'm going to work this because I believe it's funny. I said, and this is true. I look at politics the way I think about freaky sex. You know, look, I'm not like I love talking about it, and I might watch it every now and then, but I ain't so committed to it that I'm about to go in the Jeffrey Epstein house and get naked with y'all. Listen, I ain't that committed. So it's me with as far as politics go. I'm telling you, I think of politics like freaky sex. There's a line like go to Jeffrey Epstein, like sex with a couch. Are you? No, I'm sorry. Give me my coat and my keys. I'm out of here. So NPA allows me to attach myself to it and detach myself just as quickly. And if you don't know how I am going to swing, then you don't know how to come at me, except come at me the real way. And that's what I think if we as African Americans were to do, because we've done it before. I'll tell you when, but I will talk about that. But to answer your specific question, I'm all Kamala Harris, and I'm thinking about doing a bald men raising money for Kamala, since white men are doing it and white women are doing it. I'm gonna create some kind of fundraiser for her, see if I can raise me $10 million to help her
Mm.
out.
Yeah, I got you. What about the brothers that say, you know what? I'm not voting at all this year.
I would say that you might as well say, well, I'm not going to take a breath and I'm not going to take a shit. I'm not going to take a poop. All right. Because that's the way I feel about that. The nonsense, it's nonsense. What I say to that brother who says I'm not going to vote, I said your little feeble mind has been manipulated exactly as they know, because Trump got elected into office. And I think we may have mentioned this last time I was on the air with you guys, but I go and research Cambridge Analytica and what's his name? Steve Bannon, Cambridge Analytica. And you will see that Steve Bannon recognized that there were two Ivy League college professors. I can't remember which school it was, but they did very extensive psychological studies to the point that, like, Twitter, I think, did it. They applied it to Twitter, where they could, based on all your tweets using these psychological studies, with 50% accuracy, they could predict the next word you were going to tweet. That's how much these people have information. I think Facebook has something like 4,800 data points on every one of its users. Now, they only sell us advertisers. They might sell us on 20 or 30 or so, location, age, and all that. But Facebook and Twitter, they know what time you go to bed, what time you wake up, what day you are most likely to sneeze, because they're checking when you are most likely to go buy Kleenex. They know all this information. Well, Steve Bannon got this wonderful idea saying, well, why don't we use that information and see if we can manipulate the voter? And he went over, he knew he couldn't do it in the United States, so he went to Great Britain. And I'm certain that some money, if you were to track it, they put their money overseas. They created this company called Cambridge Analytica. And if you've ever gone onto Facebook and did this thing where they say, what would you look like if you were 70 years old? And people were doing that back, passing it around and sharing it with their friends. Well, you had to give that app access to your Facebook photos. And you click it. Yeah, you have access to my Facebook photos. But people didn't know that when they clicked yes, They were taking that access and going into all your friends lists and your contacts and pulling all that data and scrubbing it and categorizing it and saying these friends are most likely to vote for Hillary and these friends are most likely to vote for Trump. The friends that are most likely to vote for Trump, we're going to send them your content that speaks well of Trump. And the friends that you have that are most likely to vote for Hillary, we're going to send them your content that speaks ill of Hillary. And they knew that Black folk, when we get caught up in taking a choice, we make no choice because we're going to always take the safe way out, simply because it's been drilled in our DNA. Don't move. The best you can do is not move. Don't make a move because the next move you make could be a bullet in your head. Don't move. And they know that Black people do that. So they jammed us up with all kinds of nonsense. And you can go and pull up the numbers, and numbers don't lie. There were 5 states that were predominantly Black Democratic stronghold states. And those were the states that Cambridge Analytica flooded with that nonsense that make brothers like your friend not want to vote. And in each of those 5 states, over 200,000 Black people did not vote. And in each one of those swing states, Trump won by less than 70,000 votes because 200,000 Black men and women decided, I'm going to just sit this one out. And that's what I feel. Anybody that tells me they sitting out the right to vote after all of our ancestors have died to give us that right, I have no respect for. None. Now, I might respect, yeah, I respect you as a man, but don't come to me with politics and talk about you. You don't have a right to speak on anything if you don't vote. So if you don't vote, just say, when somebody asks you, what do you think about Trump? Say, I didn't vote, and shut up. Keep it moving, because that's what I feel. But if the most precious thing that we have in a democracy is our right to vote for whomever we want to vote for. And because Black men were slipping and went to sleep, Obama was denied a Supreme Court justice appointee, and Trump, because they delayed Obama's, Trump got that, and then Trump should have got just one appointee. But they rushed through the same way they didn't want to rush on Obama, they rushed through one for Trump. So they got Obama's delay, they got Trump's definite, and then they got the one that should have been put on delay for Biden. If all things were fair, they would have done the same thing. But why did Trump get 3? Because Black men didn't vote. And the president and a Congress, they've been rigging this thing. And then they thought, you know what, these Negroes ain't going to vote again. So let's go ahead and do Project 2025 because we know we're going to get all of this done. And that's the only reason why Project 2025 is out, because they knew that Biden was going to be running and he was going to be so distasteful to Black men that Black men was going to say, well, I don't like Biden. I don't like Trump either. So I'm just not going to vote. And they knew that when Black men did not vote, they were going to be able to run the tables, and they were already geared up and ready to go. And then Project 2025 went public because Negroes like me kept talking about it.
So before I let you go, man, let's talk about the Coralie Fund.
The Coralie Cuff Fund was started by my wife and me prior to her death. My very first nonprofit I started in the year 2000. I mean, not the year in 1982, actually. But I started that as Wonderful Productions. And we got our nonprofit status, but my mom passed away in 1988 after I did my first really big event, bringing Whitman Mayo, the guy that played Grady on Sanford and Son. I brought him to Miami to speak. And I was only 28 years old, but Whitman, while riding in the back of the limo, asked my friend Alexis if she, her name was Alexis Snyder. He is Alexis Snyder. He asked her, what does she want to do in the future? And she says she always wanted her own television talk show. She's maybe 25 years old. Then he asked me, what did I want to do? And I said, well, you know, I learned my leadership skills in the Army. I'm manager at a fast food restaurant. I'm really good at pulling things together in the background, like I put together this visit of yours. He says, well, you should be a producer. And then he said, why don't you produce her TV show? And simultaneously, the both of us started giving him excuses why it won't happen. And this is the 1980s Miami, where there were 3 riots, where racism had moved down to Miami and was like taking a hold. Cops were killing brothers long before Trayvon Martin in Miami. We already have done 3 riots. So the nation is just basically catching up to what Miami has already gone through. And we gave them all these excuses. They won't let us do this, this. So Whitman stopped us in the middle of that rant and he said, who is this they? And where does they live? And then he said, listen, no revolution has ever begun with the masses. It's always 2 or 3 people who get together and decide to change things. Long story short, 90 days later, the Alexis Snyder Show was on the air and Richard Cuff was executive producer. And we had it on 3 different channels of BET in Miami. And unfortunately, 3 months after launching the television show, my mom passed away at just 50 years old, 3 days after her 50th birthday, November 7th. Her birthday was November 4th. I shut down the operation of the nonprofit. I grieved for quite some time. And then when I met my wife, I was literally in a garage in our new house. And I found the paperwork for the start of the wonderful productions, and I had let it go. And I decided that we would rename it the Coralie Cuff Fund, and we would use it to basically give our large gift and tithing through. So we started it as a donor advised fund. Later, we started the Coralie Cuff Foundation as an extension of our nonprofit League of Florida Orchestras. And now the Coralie Cuff Fund provides scholarships through golf tournaments. We've got a golf tournament coming up on the 14th, and special events and fun like the Operation Eclipse and our superhero challenge. I'm going to send you some information on the superhero challenge, and maybe I can come back and we can talk about that closer to November 15th. But now the Coralie Cuff Fund basically serves as a donor advised fund. And in essence, it's a pool of money that sits and it grows and it gets bigger and bigger as I add other cities. And eventually we expect this fund to hit well over $50 million. How fast it happens, that depends on how well I do. You know, I'm constantly putting my money in it. And if I have to put every dime that I have and only my dimes, I will. And I know that God then will bless me with 50 million to do it. And I know that when he does, that's what it's for. So our fund now gives out micro grants to early stage entrepreneurs through the Coralie Cuff Fund and through our Miriam R. Cuff Innovation Center. And then through our Guiding Success program, we provide violins, music lessons, and the teachers, the 3 and 4 year olds to learn to play violin while in preschool. And our mission is to encourage literacy through entrepreneurship and the arts. And my goal is to do that until all families of the earth are blessed.
And my last question for you, man, you know, on Black Men Sundays, we've had, you know, a lot of guests talk about mentors. You had Les Brown as a mentor. Let's just talk about that for a little bit.
When I came home from the Army in first, I got to give you a little backstory. I was in Korea, 1980, literally to the point of suicide, and spoke to an Army chaplain who pissed me off, and that saved my life because he said, Sean, I'm just a 56 Alpha, which is the name for Army chaplain. He said, you need to see a doctor. I'm like, what kind of mess is that for a preacher to tell somebody, and I'm on the verge of suicide? And I told my mama I no longer wanted to kill myself. I wanted to kill him. My mom said, praise the Lord. God used him to save you. I said, Mama, God was about to get him killed. But I came in that summer, the May 1980 riots. If you guys want to look up some Miami history, Google Arthur McDuffie May riots 1980, and there's an amazing story. I was in Korea in May of 1980 and got the newspaper, and on the front page, there was a photo of these brothers pushing a police car over, setting it on fire. And I called my mom and said, what's going on? And she said that like 5 police officers had been acquitted of beating this motorcyclist to death, claiming he cracked his head open like an egg, even though he was wearing a helmet. And all the dents in his head matched their flashlights. And one of the police officers was so guilt-ridden that he pleaded, went against them and pleaded that, I saw them do it. I didn't do it, but they did it. It got so hot that it left, they moved it to Tampa, and they found all of the police officers, including dude who said who confessed, found everybody not guilty. And that moment, the city burst out into flames. And that's what they captured. When I came home out of the Army, literally, there were some buildings. It seemed like the Goodyear tire store was still smoldering because they couldn't put all those tires out. And Les Brown, though, during that time had become the voice on the radio because he had just moved back to Miami from Ohio, and then the riot happened. And Les got on the radio at WEDR 99, which is 99 Jams, but it was what was it? WEDR 99 Jams now. But Jerry Russian, we all grew up with him. So Jerry Russian and Les Brown were on the radio, keeping the community calm. And so by the time I got home the next year, August of 81, Les Brown was pretty much a staple in the community. Everybody knew his voice on the radio, and he was doing a Wednesday night weekly meeting. And a friend of, somehow I found out about it and I went there, and it was like church. And Les at that time was trying to become a New Thought minister. He was working with a woman named Johnny Coleman. And I guess she was going to ordain him as a minister. And but he was, it was the positive thinking, almost like Reverend Ike kind of stuff, without the church. And Les, in that meeting, one of those meetings, he said, if life knocks you down, try to land on your back. Because if you can look up, you can get up. And that resonated with me so well that I was drawn to him like a moth to a flame. Next thing you know, I'm volunteering to help him in he opened up a place called the Center for Truth, which is just like what I'm doing here with the Miriam R. Cuff Innovation Center. And he was getting money from the city to build out the center. Now the city was giving him tons of money, but here was the problem. Les, Les, I love you. I'll share this story with you guys about what happened. But it really was me more than Les, because I was starstruck, right? Remember, Les Brown wasn't what I was excited about. I was excited about how this man's energy connected me to God. I was so fired up. I was like, you mean there's a direct connection that I can get to God and it comes through my mind and positive thinking and all that other stuff? I never heard that before. I'm 22 years old. I'm soaking this in. Les was maybe 35, 36, somewhere in there. So he was a much older guy. And I'm following him around, listening to every word. Well, Janet Reno started going after Les because she was thinking I think Les used some of the money to pay off his girlfriend's house or whatever the case was. And Janet Reno went after him like a pit bull. She was on him, literally ran him out of town. And Les tells that story that he was on the Greyhound bus and somebody said to him about public speaking or whatever the case is, but he doesn't tell the story as to why he was on the bus. Janet Reno ran him out of town. And or I don't know if she actually ran him out, but I know he left around that time that Janet Reno was turning up the heat. But maybe a couple weeks before that, I was working Yellow Page sales at Bell South, and I called this woman to sell her the ads, and she heard my voice, and she said, "Have you ever thought about doing radio?" And I said, "No." She said, "I'm going to set an appointment for you to come in and talk to Mr. Sounderling." I didn't know Jay Sounderling was a guy that owned 30 something radio stations. Black, you can go up. White man owned radio stations that black people were playing music on. So he's a historical figure. I didn't know this, but I go talk to him, and he was approaching senility. He's becoming senile. He looked at me. He says, "You'll never make it in broadcasting." And I didn't even want to be in broadcasting, but when he said that, I got so mad. I said, "I hope the old bastard lived to see it, because I'm gonna be the best DJ on earth." And so I ultimately got into radio because he pissed me off. But that next week, I was driving in the car. Now, remember, I had been working with Les for about 18 months by this time. That next week, I felt I could tell Les about that situation. And I was pointing over to the building as we were driving on Expressway. I said, "Les, you see that building over there? There's a guy named Jay Sounderling who owned 30-something radio stations." And Les said, "What were you doing over there?" And the way he said it to me put me on guard. I was like, okay, I can't tell him that he inspired me to want to own a whole network of radio stations. So I kind of gave him the softball answer just in case he was going to piss on it. And I said, well, I talked to him about being a DJ. And Les said, "A DJ? Why you want to be a damn DJ? Half them Negroes over there can't even tie their own shoes." I just snapped. Man that I was holding up like the most positive man on earth suddenly was no different than my dad, who all he could do was tear me down. And my dad told me, "Stop all this trying to be somebody." And man, I'm telling you, I don't know, all of a sudden I just felt like a rush of tears about to flow, because that hurt me so bad that somebody that I idolized would piss on me that way. And I've never told anybody this publicly. And 10 years later, I'm president of a limo service here in Jacksonville, and Les Brown happens to come here to speak. And I couldn't wait to show Les that, look, bro, I'm there now, man. I'm on the radio. I'm president of a limo service. I'm I'm glad to pick you up. I picked him up. He needed a haircut. I drove him over to get a barber. Les went on a speaking engagement, and on the way back, these women gave him this beautiful frame with a thank you in it. Les was getting out the limo, going to the airport. I said, Les, you left your award or whatever that is, that certificate. He says, I'll just leave it. And I was like, man, the human part of those that motivate us is we need to not be motivated. We need to make certain that we're not motivated by the human part. That's all I'm saying. So that's my Les Brown story. But my point is I followed him right on through his marriage with Gladys Knight and have been inspired by everything he did. And that's why I said it wasn't about him showing me who he was. It was about me discovering who I was. And once I discovered who I was and that my success cannot be attached to another man, God just took me to a whole new level.
And Richard Cuff, man, thanks for coming on Black Men Sundays again. You know, you Black Men Sundays alumni. Hey, Gary, man, y'all boys from Duval, y'all off the chain up there.
Well, we just getting started.
Yeah, that's right, man. That's right. So yeah, so Richard Cuff, man, Coach Richard Cuff. Thanks for coming on Black Men Sundays. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week. I appreciate you, brother. Peace.
It's a Black Man Sunday.